Hello and welcome to Sports Bar. I'm your host, Travis Stanley. We're glad you've joined us for another episode. We have a lot of new stuff to run through, so let's get started. Guys, App State versus Akron this past Saturday. App traveled to Akron, Ohio, and Akron certainly had a very explosive offense coming into this game, but the Apps played really well. Guys like Jalen Moore had a huge game, and also we saw an emergence of the passing game. Mm-hmm. What did you see out of that game?
Very significant game for Jalen Moore, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very, very impressive game. That puts him actually 6th highest running yardage in App State history. I think we saw Lamb putting a lot more trust in Moore, in part because of his good performance.
And that's amazing, too, that he could be 6th on the all-time rushing list, considering he's never entered a season as the starter so far, and he really only played the last 4 games of last season. Anyone else? The passing game, Lamb really hadn't been able to get it going early in the season, but guys certainly stepped up. We actually saw Shaden Metters play like the guy who people thought he would be in the preseason. Mm-hmm. Jack, what did you see out of the game?
I saw a lot of good things out of our passing game, but I think we have to look at the defensive side of the ball, which is where App State's supposed to shine. We saw a really good front 8, but I think what we saw is that App still has a weakness in the defensive back position. Even though Clifton Duck did have 2 interceptions that really helped out in the game and really made the game a game changer, 2 interceptions. But we saw that Akron came in with throwing the ball. They were running and gunning. I think their quarterback had over 500 yards.
Came in with 10 touchdowns to 2 interceptions on the year.
He had he had an awesome game, and it really showed that I think App State still has a weakness there in the defensive back positions.
Yeah, but it's also like we said, Akron certainly no patty cake on the offensive side of the ball. But I totally agree. The week previous against Miami, we saw us get burned. We still got burned several times, so we definitely have work to do in the defensive backfield. Moving from football to field hockey, App State recently took on Louisville in field hockey. And Greg, what do we see out of the App State field hockey team?
It was a rough game. Team graduated a lot of seniors last year, so you can expect that there's bound to be some transition time. Louisville, the opposition, quadrupled the Mountaineers in shots, just in general. And that's something that I think we've seen this season. App State's having a little trouble keeping up with the scoring. One to watch here is Rachel Gaines. She's transferred from Ohio State. She's goalkeeper. She's done a fantastic job. 45 saves as goalkeeper, 11 against Louisville. I think she's definitely one of the bright spots of the team this year. I think we're going to see some building happen around her.
Yeah, and I know one thing that I was excited to see out of the field hockey team, just in these previous few years, the fact that they have their own field now. They're not playing on the football field. I knew a few people who played field hockey for us, and they were very glad to have their own facility. It certainly solidifies your standing as a varsity sport on campus. But now we're going to turn to the social media thoughts from this past week's game against Akron. Here's a look. So something new at Sports Bar that we just shared with you was the sights and sounds from this past week's game. And if you're watching a game, don't forget to tag us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and we'll make sure to share your memories right here on Sports Bar. We'll take a quick break, and coming back out of the break, we'll show you a small clip of the App State Rise program.
You have your diploma. Now what? Want to keep your momentum up, your energy flowing, your pay grade growing? Do you want to further your education on your terms in a place where you crunch numbers, not become one? A place where you can climb boulders as well as ladders. A place where you're as comfortable in these as you are in these. A place that looks like this. At Appalachian State University, Masters Matter.
Last week on Rise.
There's only probably 10 or so people that have really seen it and got to
Yeah, see it up close.
Next 12 in a row, next winning streak. Now you got to be consistent, just like the head coach said. You play harder than anyone in the country. That is our profile.
Hit at the 7, stays on his feet to the 5, all the way to the end zone, and he is in. That's an App State touchdown for Marcus Cox. First win of 2016 for App State. They win the whiteout game, and now they can look ahead to Miami.
Hey, Coach. Hey, how you doing, Mike? Good to see you. Yeah. Coach Tom. Hey, Tom, how are you? Yeah, great. Good. What's up, man? Doing all right? Good to see you, man. Yeah.
Coach, our sincerest apologies.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right.
Traffic.
It's only 15 minutes.
How
you doing, Ash? Yeah, good to see you.
You were here as a quarterback when I was at EKU.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You finished a year after. So you played Eastern at their place in '96.
Okay.
When you would have been the quarterback, and I had finished in '95.
Well, I finished in 95.
Oh, you did? You were in '95 too?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you weren't here in '96?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
My last year was 95. Yeah. And I graduated in 96.
Oh, yeah, okay. So you're the same as me.
Same as you.
96. You're 42? 40.
No, I'm 40. Wow. 44.
44? Oh,
Yeah.
you redshirted.
Yeah, I did.
Gotcha.
I did.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
I probably need to take 2 red shirts, but yeah, I did a red shirt.
Take 2 red shirts.
Yeah, but there were some good battles in there somewhere, you know. Matter of fact, the first time I started calling plays was in '03, and we went to Hawaii. So that was my first time calling plays. It was the first game of the year, you know. And everybody talks about when you go to Hawaii how the island beats you, and it did. We played pretty good, but then they beat us. We came back and we lost to EKU the very next week. We lost like 3 out of the next 4. I mean, it's bad. That was my first experience calling plays too. So all that together was pretty rough, But then we got it back on track. But anyway, there were some good programs. For sure.
So, Coach, I'm curious, like, how do you manage this week where, I mean, you're just trying to focus on a football game. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the town and the media, it's all about everything other than the game.
Yeah.
You kind of handle that.
Yeah, it's like I was telling our strength coach, it's kind of been like a spectacle instead of a game, But for this town, I mean, it's pretty awesome. And our team it's been a normal week for us. It really has. There's not been anything different out of the ordinary for our players or anybody on our staff or team. I've had a little bit more media this week, but other than that, it's really hadn't been. There's a lot of talk on, this social media has really changed everything. Sure. I mean, it's crazy. So
some schools, given your history, I know there'd be some schools that look at like the Tennessee game and say, "Man, we played great. We were close. Hey, that's a win." But I know you guys don't view it that way because of your history. So, like, how did you guys rebound for the game?
Yeah, I mean, it was we played on Thursday night, so that was good in a way because we had a couple of extra days. We didn't do anything Friday and Saturday. We let them, go to class and then go home or whatever. We came back Sunday and
we were
worked
all
out.
watching the game together, by the way.
Oh, really? Yeah, it was a great game. I mean, it was a great game. Now, we knew we were outmatched. I mean, they got more talent. I mean, across the board. But our guys, I mean, I think what we do scheme-wise gave us a chance defensively, and we're here to win. And same with this week. It's going to be a tough matchup for us. I mean, Miami, the way they play, kind of similar to us offensively. They want to run the football and play action, but they have great backs. So, as long as we can keep the game close, we can kind of stay in that same kind of game plan.
You can catch the entire episode of Rise right here on App TV and at appstatesports.com. Moving on to national sports, and first we're going to talk about Carolina's game against the Vikings. Braxton, Carolina was not able to get the win this week, and they outgained them in yards. They held ball for more time than did the Vikings, and really dominated every statistical category except for turnovers.
Right.
What did you see out of that game?
Well, if you take away the punt return, there's some yardage there, and obviously they scored. The safety, that right there is what is that? 2, 7, 9 points.
Yeah.
So there's 9 points that the Panthers had nothing to come from. But really, the main story was the game was the 8 sacks that the Panthers allowed on Cam. Now, not necessarily that wasn't the offensive line. The offensive line has gotten a little better the past couple years. But really, yes, the Vikings' defensive line is great. They've shown that against Aaron Rodgers, and now Cam. They're shutting down some of the best quarterbacks in the game. But really, I think one of the biggest things we have to take a look at is, well, Cam needs to take some responsibility. Sure, he doesn't have Jonathan Stewart, and sure, I'm sure he can kind of blame a little bit of the week and kind of what's going on in Charlotte to some degree. But he's got to take some of the blame, because a lot of times when you're a quarterback and you're going through your progression and you go through 3 seconds and you still don't have anybody open, you're Cam Newton. The reason you were an MVP was, you got out of the pocket and made something happen.
That's exactly
but he didn't do that, so he held the ball too long.
Yeah.
And got sacked 8 times. Now, a couple of those was the offensive line fault, but 3 or 4, maybe even 5 was Cam's.
Yeah. If you are the reigning MVP, you generally should not have the luxury of excuses.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you can't take any excuses. You have to take the blame for this. And sure, he doesn't have Stewart, so you've got to be more assertive.
Yeah.
And he just held on to the ball too long. You got to get rid of the ball.
Exactly. Jack, what was your takeaways from this game?
Well, I think the big takeaway here is that while you shouldn't underestimate the Minnesota Vikings defense, I think we've seen them come in for the first 3 weeks of play. They played very well against a good Green Bay offense. They got after Aaron Rodgers 5 times, put him on the ground with a sack. Then he comes back this week and throws 4 touchdowns. Then we look at them against Cam, is they put pressure on the ball. Mike Zimmer is a coach that is very defensive-minded. He was a defensive coordinator in the league before he was a head coach, very defensive-minded, came in. And I think he just played very well defense. I think we're seeing a resurgence in Minnesota as far as the defensive side of the ball. He has a team where Adrian Peterson is out. Yep. He has a quarterback he just has brought in, is learning a brand new system. So he has to rely on what he knows, which is the defense, and he has brought it in. He's made a new system. He's made it where they go and get after the ball. And I think bringing the pressure in on Cam is what caused him to have some of those bad throws and some of those interceptions. If you're getting sacked 8 times a game, that's going to bring a lot of bad decisions on your part, just trying to get the ball out of there so you don't have another sack.
If you have a limited offense, you have to bring it defensively, certainly to even have a chance.
Just one more point there. I thought this was interesting. I found this online yesterday. In the Cam era for the Panthers, they're now 0-11, including the playoffs, when they allow Cam to be pressured at least 14 times.
Yeah, which is a ridiculous amount of times.
Yeah, yesterday was 17 times. Yeah. During the Super Bowl, which 2 different types of defenses, during the Super Bowl was 21 times he was pressured. Yesterday was 17. It's just an interesting fact.
He has not had the best protections.
No, he hasn't.
I think we're still seeing, not an investment where the Panthers need to make. They're making investment in offensive weapons when they need to be making investments in tackles and guards, mostly tackles.
Moving from the NFL to Major League Baseball, we have certainly the untimely death of Jose Fernandez to talk about. He was, I believe, 24 years old. He died in a boating accident with 3 other people. Greg, what was your thoughts on that story?
Huge loss. Jose Fernandez has a very Florida sort of story. He was an immigrant from Santa Clara, Cuba, became a citizen in 2015. All kinds of awards, 2013 MLB All-Star Team, 2013 National League Rookie of the Year. He had a great fastball. He was obviously treasured by his team. He was someone that Floridians sort of got around. They understood his story. What makes it the more tragic is his girlfriend Carla is pregnant with their first child. Mm-hmm. It's a tragic situation, and I think a lot of teams have responded in kind. The Miami Dolphins had a moment of silence before their game. A number of other Major League Baseball teams had moments of silence. The Marlins canceled their game afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think definitely canceling the game was the move there. I mean, definitely the classier thing to do. But anytime that you hear of untimely deaths of anyone, but particularly for athletes where there's so much in the public eye, and someone like Jose, who is like you said, an up-and-coming star, particularly in South Florida, that was certainly sad to hear. Mm-hmm. But moving from that sad story to something definitely not as sad and more exciting, the NL wildcard race is heating up right now. And Braxton, what do you see out of the wildcard, and who do you think will end up coming out of that?
Well, the wild card is always something that people take a look at because, if you don't win your division, you still have a chance to make the playoffs. But this year in particular has a chance to be historically great. Never in the history of the wild card, which is just new with the two teams, has there ever been a three-way tie or a two-way tie. So this would be really cool if that was to happen. And it has a chance to. There's only 7 games left in the season. Some of the teams, like the Giants, for example, aren't playing very well. They're 25 and 45 in their past since the All-Star break. Not playing very well. They may just squeak in if they have a chance. The Mets look like, to me, if I was to pick the top 2 teams that make the wild card, I'd give them to the Mets and then the Cardinals. Not because the Cardinals will play their way in, it's just because the Giants will basically give it to them by default.
Well, entering the season, looking at the Mets rotation, that was a murderous row just on paper. And
yeah.
I thought they might have a chance, flirt with 100 wins this season. Obviously, that's not how it's ended up.
Yeah, they've had a lot of injuries.
For this reason or that. But if they do get into the wild card, I think that they have a definite chance to be, kind of a sleeper surprise kind of team. And possibly,
Well, whoever wins the wild card game's got to play the Cubs, so that's going to be a difficult.
I'm just saying I feel like they have the talent more than do possibly other wild card opponents. So moving from baseball, Arnold Palmer died yesterday at the age of 87, I believe. He meant so much to the world of golf, particularly here within the state. You were talking about your father went to Wake Forest. That's his alma mater. Guys, what's your thoughts on the death of Arnold Palmer?
Well, Arnold Palmer, referred to as the king in the golfing world, 7-time major champion, 7th all-time in wins, was in an era of golf with Jack Nicklaus where we saw one of the greatest rivalries in golf, really when television started to bloom and we started seeing golf on television. You
saw their face.
Yeah, he was one of the bigger personalities, always great with friends. I know Greg was talking about how personable he was. Just a huge loss in the golfing world. Really, really going to miss that.
Yeah, certainly. Guys, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's just tough. The Jose Fernandez deal is hard too. You don't know how to react to seeing an athlete pass away. This one is more expected because he was up there in age, but at the same time, it's just hard for somebody who really kind of made golf popular, was really a trailblazer for the sport. It's just tough.
Certainly, and definitely the golfing community will be grieving his loss, I'm sure, for the bigger part of the next year. But we will be right back here on Sports Bar with a look at fantasy football.
We are really pushing our students to think about things from a local to global standpoint, and I enjoy teaching those classes. It certainly cements everything that I believe in, that I think is important. I'm passionate about sustainability. I'm passionate about fresh water and protecting it. When you've got, the number of faculty that we do living that sustainable life, demonstrating to our students, they realize it's not just something we're saying in the classroom, it's in everything we do here. It's part of who we are.
Hi, we're back here on Sports Bar taking a look at the show's Fantasy Football League, and there's still a chance for Monday night upsets, but let's take a look at this week's scores. All right, guys, taking a look here. That top left-hand corner, that's my matchup, and I'm not one to brag, but I am laying the wood to Joey Barretti right now, 102-46. It looks like Greg has the edge over Jack, 104-74. Carlin is beating Adam Witten of IMG, 104-85, and looks like Rob is beating Sam, 105-95. And moving on to the individual matchups, we'll take a further look at those scores. Looking here, this is the Rob and John's matchup. Sam. John on his fantasy football score, 105-95. Guys, what do you see here in this matchup?
I think the biggest note here is that Sam has Rob Gronkowski with 0 points. Starting this week, even though he's been injured for the past couple weeks, his first game back, he would have a limited amount of snaps. So I think he was expecting a little more from Gronkowski, but just didn't quite get it.
I also had Gronk in my lineup for another league and got burned on that. I was hoping that he would give me something because he is such a fantasy football asset to have. So that definitely hurt. But we can go ahead transitioning to the following matchup. And this is my matchup. I am Cam Newton's Towel, 102-46. I am playing Joey Beretti. And guys, you know, honestly, I just feel fortunate, really. I mean, LaShawn McCoy really played well. He had 23 points. Andrew Luck, you know, kind of a mediocre game. He threw for a lot of yards. It got me 13. But it looks like, you know, Joey still has a few guys to play. But you know, Julio is questionable. I don't know if they've ruled him out. And you know, Mark Ingram. So, do you guys think he can make up a almost 60-point gap?
No.
In Monday
It
night?
looks to me like he's trying to lose.
Possibly. You know, we haven't talked about throwing fantasy football games here on SportsBar, but that's a good possibility.
Yeah.
But I am gonna say that I'm gonna go ahead and move on from 2-0 2-0 to 3-0 on the season. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the next matchup. All right, this matchup is Carlin and Adam Witten. It is 104-85 as it stands. And guys, taking a look at this one, you know, Carlin's 1-1. Adam Witten so far is 0-2, which, you know, for someone, you know, here at the athletics department, we might have to kind of, you know, get onto him about that. Maybe see like what's going on in his fantasy football team.
He might need some fantasy football coaching.
You know, do you guys see anything out of this that surprises you? I mean, Marvin Jones got 32 points.
Jeez.
I mean,
that's the difference right there.
Off of only 6 receptions, 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. So yeah, I totally agree. That is the difference in that game. Looking at Adam's team, did have a nice game out of Mike Evans, the wide receiver for Tampa Bay. Had 19 on 10 receptions for 132 yards and a touchdown. But I think really, unless Brandon Cooks for Adam plays out of his mind, I would say that Carlin will end up winning this matchup and improve to 2-1. What do you guys think?
Yeah, you know, I think Adam
reasonable.
would have had a good chance if he would have started a different running back with Adrian Peterson being out. He didn't make that switch, but if he had a different running back, it might be a different story.
Definitely. And moving on to the last matchup between Jack and Greg. And taking a look at this, Greg, you got the upper hand. Guys, you know, what's going on, Jack? I mean, why do you feel like you're losing by 30 here?
Biggest thing is that I didn't get anything out of my flex position or my defense, and the biggest thing for Greg here is that he got 22 points from both of his running backs, 23 points from T.Y. Hilton, and then 14 from Demaryius Thomas. So throughout that running back and wide receiver position, Greg really has some strong players. I think Greg is the team to look out for this year. I really do.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, with Drew Brees yet to play, he could really pad this win right here.
He could honestly make it 130.
He could win by 60.
74.
He could easily win by 60.
Really could.
Yeah.
So Greg, kudos to you, man.
Wow.
Yep.
You should coach that one guy and get some help.
And I always like to see T.Y. Hilton play well, just because Satterfield used to coach him for 1 year at FIU, and he coached wide receivers in part to also being the offensive coordinator. He talks about him a lot. But that is fantasy football for this week here on SportsBar, and that's all the time we have. But thanks for joining us, and make sure to follow App TV on Twitter and Instagram, and like us on Facebook. And we'll see you here next week at the same time for a new episode of SportsBar. I'm Travis Stanley, and for all of us here at SportsBar and App TV, good night.